Okay, welcome back everybody. This is the first video for ICS4U, Grade 12 Computer Science. And so if you're in this course, I assume you have taken ICS3U and are comfortable with the Java language. Now, some of you might be a little bit nervous and you may have forgotten a lot of the language tools from last year. And don't worry, we're going to review. In fact, the whole first unit is just going to be a recap and a review of last year's concepts. So the first thing I'd like to run through with you right now, just to make sure, is that you have the BlueJ IDE, the integrated development environment, installed on your computer. Now, most of you probably already have that, but just in case you need a little refresher, you can watch this little tutorial. And then I'm going to make my first BlueJ project, and we're going to make our first class within that project. Okay, so feel free to skip ahead if you've already got this. Maybe skip ahead to the part where I'm making the class, and that will just be a good refresher for you. Okay, so you want to go to bluej.org and scroll down. Now, you can either get the most recent version, but I prefer, and I have been using a previous version of BlueJ, and it goes down to version 3. Now, I scroll down to version 3.1.7, and if you have a Windows machine, click the first link here, and then just follow the instructions. So download that, and then open the download file, and follow the instructions from there. Or if you have a Mac, then you're going to download the fourth link. And then same thing, make sure you double click on that zip file and follow the instructions. Now, in version 4, there are a few changes, but one major thing is they don't allow the creation of Java applets in version 4. So that's why I have downloaded version 3. Now, I don't actually know if we'll be doing applets in this course. Like last year, we will probably just stick to graphical applications using swing graphics and JFrames and things like that. Okay, so yeah, it actually doesn't matter what version you get. I just prefer using version 3.1.7. Okay, so now I have that installed, so I'm just going to open up BlueJ here. And if this is the first time opening BlueJ, let's see. Okay, there it is there. If it's the first time you're opening BlueJ, you're going to see a blank window like this. So the first thing you want to do is create a project. Project, new project. And I'm simply going to call, actually first we're going to locate, we're going to decide where we want to save this project. I'm just going to save it to my desktop. If you're using your own computer, I would invite you to also save it to your desktop. But you could also save it to your, your documents folder or your Google Drive. If you have Google Drive file stream installed on your computer, then you could do that. But I'm just going to save it to my desktop, and then maybe every week or every 2 weeks, just make a backup of that folder. Make a copy and save it to your Google Drive, just in case anything happens to your computer. You have a backed up copy of that, and I can help you out with that in class, no problem. Okay, so I'm going to leave it here at the desktop, and I'm going to change the folder name to Unit 1. Okay, and when I press create, a few things will happen here. So you'll see this new project window appear, but you'll also see a Unit 1 folder appear here, and you can open that folder, and you'll see that there's only 2 files. There's a package and a README. Okay, so we can close that. So we're going to work within BlueJ, and what you can do is create several classes, like different independent programs. Basically, all the programs that you write in Unit 1, I'd like you to store inside your Unit 1 project. Okay, so we're going to click New Class, and we're going to give this class a name. Now, a class in Java, another word for class is like your program. It's your computer program. there is a deeper meaning, and there's a reason why they called it class, and it actually stands for classification. And we'll discover that once we start learning about object-oriented programming. Okay, but we're just doing a simple review here. So I'm going to call this. I'm going to call this circle program. We may have actually done a program like this last year. So I'm going to press OK. Oh, we'll just leave it as class. We're actually going to go through and do some of these types of classes this course, but we're just going to leave it as a simple class and press OK. Now let's double click this program and you'll see that there is some default code. What I like to rearrange my windows. So I'll put this window over here just so it makes it kind of easier to compile. Oh, I should say at this point, if you're comfortable with using another development environment like Eclipse, NetBeans, something else, then go ahead. You can use that on your computer. I just find BlueJ to be very simple and easy to use. So I'm going to actually press Control A and delete all of this code, and we're going to start fresh. So the first thing we are going to put is a class header. So the name of the class must be the same name as the class over here. So we're defining it as circle program. And then every class needs a set of curly brackets, which we call braces. Now, some of you like to put the open brace up here. So that's called end of line bracing, and that's completely fine. In fact, half the programmers in the professional world do it this way, and the other half do it this way. Okay, so inside these braces, we put methods. So the most important method thus far is going to be called the main method. So we define that as public static void main string square brackets args. Okay, and that's the header. So that declares the beginning of the main method, and then methods also need curly brackets. All right. So later in the course, or later in this unit, we're going to review how to create other methods. So you could make another method down here with its own set of braces. In fact, last year in your final project, you probably had 20 or more methods down there. So these programs can get quite large. But we're going to keep it simple today and just do one method inside one class. Okay. Up above this class, can you put code up here? Well, you can put import statements. And in fact, I'm going to import something called java.util.scanner. You can also put comments. So a lot of programmers will maybe put their name at the top and then the date. So September 7th, 2020. And then they might have a little sentence that explains the program. So this program reviews variables, user input, and simple arithmetic. Okay, so basically what I want this program to do, so the end goal of this program, I want the user to enter the radius of a circle, and then I want to display the area of that circle. That's it. Okay. So in order for input to happen, I need to first create a scanner variable. Again, this is all nothing new, but it has been a while since you've done this. In fact, again, at the end of last year, if you took my ICS3U course, we did a graphical tic-tac-toe project to end the year, and we didn't have any scanner variables. So it's actually been several months since you've seen a program like this. So hopefully this review is useful. So we only have to do this once, create a scanner variable called scan. Now, I'm going to prompt the user, which means I'm going to ask them for something. So I'm going to say, enter the radius. Okay. Now, I need to do two things here. So I need to create a variable that will store the radius that they've entered. So you need to decide at this point, Is it going to be an integer? Do we want to allow for decimals? Is it going to be a string with words? Is it going to be a single character? Is it going to be a true or false value? So there's a whole bunch of different data types, and I'm just going to keep it as an int for now. So I'm going to declare an int variable called r. Okay, and I'm going to assign it scan.nextInt. All right, so what this line of code does, when I eventually run the program, this line pauses the program. So it waits, and it waits for the user to enter something. And whenever they press the enter key, that value is going to be stored inside this variable. Okay, so I'll show you. Just really simple. I'm going to print r. Or let's do something. You entered plus r. Okay, so in this case, this is called the concatenation operator. So it concatenates a literal string to a variable value. All right, so if I run this, and let me remind you how to run a program, you're first going to compile it. That does two things. It checks for errors. Okay. Yeah, it checks for errors. I was waiting for it to say no errors. Okay, and it also converts this program into binary, into zeros and ones. Okay, so I'm going to right click and I'm going to press void main, and then we'll just press OK. All right, so here's our program running, and I'm just going to make this window a little bit smaller. Okay, so if I enter, let's say 5, then it just gives me, this is called an echo statement, so it's just echoing what I entered. So it's printing you entered 5. All right, let's run that again. What if I entered negative 873? Okay, so it works. You entered negative 873. What if I enter 3 billion? Okay, then it crashes. And the reason why is because 3 billion is too large to fit inside an integer variable. So if you remember from last year, the largest int that you can use is 2 to the power of 31 minus 1, which happens to be around 2.1 billion. So that's the biggest number that you can fit into an int. Okay. Another thing that may cause this to crash is if you put a decimal. So if I put something like 5.7, that's going to crash too, because you have created an int variable and you've said scan.nextInt. All right, so you got to be careful when you run your program. All right, so I'm going to do one more thing here. So I said I wanted to calculate the area. So what I'm going to do is make an area variable. But I'm going to make this a double, because the area will most likely have decimals in the value, because the area of a circle, if you remember, is pi r squared. So how do I do pi r squared? Well, r squared is easy. That's just r times r. Okay, or you could do math.pow r comma 2. Okay, that also works. But I'll just keep it simple. Just do r times r. And then I have to multiply that by pi. So there's actually a built-in pi command. That's just math.pi. Okay, don't forget a semicolon at the end. So what the compiler will do when it gets to this line, it does this side first. So it always does the right-hand side of the equal sign. So it'll do this first, and it'll get that calculated value, and it will store it into this variable called area. So now in my answer, I'm going to say the area is, and then I'm going to put area, which is the name of this variable that I put here. Oh, what are the rules of variables? Like, could I call this area 7 if I wanted to? Yes, that's fine. You would just have to change that also to area 7. Could you name it 7 area? No, that's going to crash. So when you're coming up with a name for your variable, you can't start with a number. In fact, you have to start with a letter. Okay. You also can't have you can't have a space. So I can't call this circle area. That would not work. You can use an underscore like that, so that does work. And you can use, a lot of programmers will use a capital letter like this. So they'll just keep it as one word with an uppercase letter. This is called camel case notation because it's kind of shaped like a camel with a hump right here. Okay. Oh, you also can't use Java reserved words. So I can't use while or if. All right. So you've got to use a word that's not a Java command. So I'm just going to come back and use a simple name called area. Okay. So if I were to compile this and run it. Okay, so it says enter the radius, and I'm going to put 5, and it says the area is 78.539, blah, blah, blah. Okay, now why are there so many decimals? Well, it's because the built-in math.py has 15 decimal places attached to it. So it's keeping 15 digits here. Okay, and I'm okay with that. What if we wanted to put a period at the end of my sentence here? Well, we can just use another concatenation operator, all right, a plus sign, and just put a literal string, period, but we need to put that inside double quotes. Okay, so you basically use double quotes anytime you want to enclose a literal string, like what literally do I want to print? You got to be careful with that. If I put double quotes around this, then that will literally print the word area. So I don't want that. I want it to print the value stored inside that variable. Okay. All right, then I could create another variable. Let's say I want to determine the circumference. All right, you might remember from math class, circumference is 2 pi r. So we could just do 2 times math.py times r. And now I can have another statement here that says the circumference is, and then I'm going to use this variable. Maybe, you know what, that variable is a little bit too long, so I'm just going to call it CIRC for circumference. And so down here, I'm just going to say CIRC, and then I'm going to concatenate a period also at the end of that. Okay, so when I run this, okay, and I'll just enter 3 as my radius. All right, so there we go. We have the area and the circumference. Now, I'll do one more thing in this video. What if I wanted the user, what if I want to allow decimal values for the radius? Well, all you would have to do is change this radius variable that we created. Let's change that to a double. So that will allow us to enter decimal values into R. Oh, and you also have to change this command. So you would say scan.next double with a capital D. And now I can enter decimal, or we call them floating point values in computer science. I thought I resized this. Let's try that again. So now if I enter 5.792, okay, so I'll gather that that is these are the right answers for that. But you can see that it's working now. Oh, can I enter an int? Like now that I've changed this to a double, can I enter an int? And you actually can. So if I just press 5, it works. So what it does behind the scenes is it automatically converts this into a double. It's called auto casting or auto boxing. So it changes 5 to 5.0 in your computer's memory, and then it can do these calculations. Okay, so you might ask, well, why don't we always just make a double variable all the time? Well, you have to remember that a double variable takes up twice as much space in your computer's memory than an int variable. So if you're certain that an int is okay, like if you're entering somebody's age or something like that, then just use an int variable, and that's a good habit to get into so that you're optimizing your space in RAM. Okay, so I'll leave it at this. There are other types of variables. We've only looked at int and double right now. There are other types like string, so that and then you would have to say scan.next line, but that's only if you are entering words or groups of characters like your name or your address or something like that. There's also a data type called Boolean. and that is if you wanted the user to enter true or false. Okay, so we don't actually use that one too often. And the other data type that you really need to know about is char. And unfortunately, there is no next char command. So as part of the scanner class, unfortunately, you can't say next char. That wouldn't work. Oh, what is a char? It's a single character, like the letter Y or the number sign. Or the dollar sign. So if you ever wanted them to enter a single character, you would set up a char variable, but you can't say scan.next char. So what you would have to do is say scan.next line as if it was a string, and then you would just say dot char at 0. So you want to take the character at index 0. And I know some of you deep back in your brains right now, you're saying, hey, I kind of remember something like this. Don't worry, we're going to have a whole video where we review all of these string methods. Okay, but let me just rewind back and change this to next double. Okay, so so the only data types that you need to know in this course are int, double, char, boolean, and string. There are many, many more data types that we will see as the course goes on, but at this point, those are the 5 that you should know. Okay. All right, I'm going to cut this video short, and in another video, we'll dive a little bit deeper into the world of arithmetic. Specifically, division is something you have to be careful with, and then modulus is something that we learned about last year. So I'll save that for another video. But that's it for this one. Thanks for watching.